I have one more question for Rick before I ask the audience. So when you started TNG, you reset the world, you built a brand new everything. How many people was actually in the art department, and how long did it take to fabricate this entirely new and I still think iconic style?
There was a couple of months building up the art department. Andrew Probert and I were the first two art people hired, and Bob Justman made a very funny crack that at the time I wasn't that happy about, but he said, you know, for what we're paying you and Andy, we could have gotten Sid Mead. You know, and that's Bob. You know, he had a very odd sense of humor, but
that's why they hired those 4 young writers.
Yeah. So you know, Probert and I were the first two artists. Herman Zimmerman was hired as production designer. We had a few different art directors under Herman, and maybe the 3 or 4 set designers. You know, to do the actual set blueprints. These guys knew their architecture skills really well. They worked with the mill. They worked with the painters. Yeah, and we occupied the art department. We occupied the same room that I was in for Star Trek The Motion Picture. Andy and I had started out in a very small little room over by the writers' building, and then we just kind of wandered over towards stage 8 and 9, and we went upstairs and we looked, and there was nobody in there. So we just sort of took over. And that's where they filled up the art department. You know, and Mike Okuda was there, and eventually we had a couple of other set the set graphics people, and along the way, you know, it became a very big, well-oiled machine. You know, and some set designers came in, some left, and you know, it was chugging along for, you know, for a good 14 years.
Okay, well, I think we'll open it up to questions. Anybody have any questions? Go ahead.
So you mentioned earlier, like a communicator and a comfortable technology. What's your take on science fiction driving technology that we see now, like things like cell phones and tablets and voice recognition? And what kind of numerical things do you think we should be striving for?
Well, you know, I think with all the modern technology, I think that, you know, science fiction and real tech have been kind of, you know, going up the ladder pretty much, you know, one after the other.
Since Jules Verne.
Oh, yeah, exactly. So I think, you know, it's sort of a convergence kind of a thing where, you know, we come up with an idea, you know, a handheld, like the pad thing, a handheld device, does all sorts of wonderful things, holds the equivalent of a few libraries of Congress, that kind of thing. One of the interesting things that you know, I've realized is, you know, you take your typical smartphone, all right, on Next Generation, we had the comm badge as a separate item, tricorder as a separate item, pad as a separate item, and you know, I think we basically did that to give the actors some business. Okay, would we do the same thing today? I don't know. You know, I still think the comm badge as a separate unit and the tricorder as a separate unit are still valid concepts. Do we have a tricorder today? Not yet. You know, but we have a lot of very specialized scanning devices, especially in the medical community. Okay, and you know, where's it going? I don't know. It's going in all different directions at once, you know, we have a lot of it. I mean, we have a lot of it right here in our pockets. You know, and little you know, wrist devices and.
Can I follow up?
Yeah, yeah.
One of the reasons they bought the Foley and Webb was something that never got used, and it's just based on something you just said, which is there was a force belt that just went across the chest, and it provided a force field so that they could go to another ship and not have to wear suits or anything, which is why I didn't like the clunky suits. Bob said, God, I love the force field. Let's do the force field.
Yeah.
And then the next time that I came in, they said, well, if we do this force field, maybe bullets can't get through, or phasers can't get through. And we caused ourselves so many problems. Well, we're not going to have a force field. And so the force field went away, and that tech didn't come back to Star Trek for a long, long time.
Well, it did, it was in the animated series.
Was it the
Yeah, they had a belt that directed the
So
force
years
around.
later, they finally used the force field. He loved it, but they were afraid that it was going to destroy the show.
Any more questions? Yeah.
You mentioned knowing Harlan Ellison. I just wondered if you had any recollections of his clashes with the producers back during Star Trek run.
I wasn't there.
Oh, okay.
I heard.
But I mean, I know Harlan, but I didn't know him back in the day.
He wasn't very happy. You know, I sold the year or two afterwards, and it was still known that they were having, you know, there was a lot of repercussion because of the rewrite of that script. That script was a magnificent script first, and it was a magnificent rewrite, but Harlan didn't do the second one. The one you see is not Harlan. And so he wasn't terribly happy about that, but he's a professional. He's not very big, by the way. He's a slight young man, not young anymore, but he is a towering presence in the Writers Guild.
Yep, go ahead.
I don't know, but I saw this teaser for, I think it's going to be the next Star Trek.
Oh, a teaser for the new series coming out.
The new series, yeah.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on the new series? What would you like to see?
Well, you know, I read all the rumors on Facebook and so forth. You know, maybe it's set after Voyager, maybe it's set after Star Trek 6. I don't know. I know some people who were involved in it. I'm not. They're moving to Canada. I told Brian Fuller I have my passport. But you know, they have their core group of creative folks, and they're going to go up to Toronto and do the show. You know, I tell people we'll just have to see what they come up with. I'm sure we will see additional teasers over the next 6 months.
Well, if you were to lead a new Trek show, what would you want to see? Which era? What Enterprise?
I could see a new series in almost any era. You know, classic. Let's say, you know, after Star Trek 6. I could see something after Voyager with a new ship and new crew, new threats. I came up with one idea that would like bring the Federation and its neighbors to its knees. You know, the point is it's a huge sandbox, and there are more stories to tell than we can imagine.
After I was on MacGyver, and we were across the street from Star Trek, and I met some of the online folks who were dealing with the web pages, and they said, do you have an idea for an online series? I said, well, maybe. So I created an online series called Star Trek Infinity, in which the idea was that the crew were all old by that time. They were still around, some of them. But that the ship itself, while the Defiant, while it had been out there in Tholian times, had actually taken on Kirk's mind. So that Tiberius ran that ship. He was the ship. And we had worked out a whole set of stories in which we go from universe to universe, fixing the unraveling universe. And it got a long way until finally Rick Berman said, I don't want to do an online series right now. So that one went away, but the upshot of that is that Star Trek Continues got a hold of me a year ago, and I pulled a chunk of that out, and we're probably shooting in August,
Wow.
a follow-up. So if you go to, if he does it, if Vic does it, they'll be shooting soon.
Excellent.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Another question? Yeah.
Yes, the communicators, do you guys use like a phone or walkie-talkie?
Well, I think the only communication devices that we came up with were the badges. I wondered along the way, okay, could you talk into the tricorder? Well, you probably could, but that's not what what they gave to the actors to do. Could you talk into the pad? Sure. Almost like Siri or what's the Google equivalent?
Google Now.
Yeah, or Cortana. I wouldn't mind talking to Cortana. I'm a big Halo fan. But the badge, Gene and and the other producers, they were very happy with the communicator badge as a standalone object, and we never really needed any other handhelds.
No, I'm talking about if you're talking about the old one then kind of,
Oh, you're starting with the TOS one.
Well, the original series communicator, it was a two-handed affair. You flipped it open, you push buttons. They wanted something simpler than that. The tricorder that we did on Next Generation actually got to flip open because once you folded it up and you could put it in your holster, your little belt holder, it was very small, very unobtrusive.
It had an LED, didn't it? I mean, in not practical senses, but I mean, it was supposed to have some kind of LED screen. So they could see
the tricorder had lots of electronics. Yeah, the next gen tricorder had a lot of electronics. The design of it was evolved through Voyager and some of the feature films.
I have a question for you. Never been answered for me. Who came up with the holodeck, and how did you guys decide to design it?
Boy, the holodeck, I think, popped up in one of the scripts. I cannot remember who wrote that. It might have been something that Gene and Bob Justman and Rick Berman and all those guys, I think that may have been something that they wanted to get in there right from the start. I'll have to go back and look at the Writer's Bible. But the actual design of the empty holodeck with the grid, that was up to Herman Zimmerman and the set designers. And once you had once we had that floor space, allocated, and that floor space was also the shuttle bay. So a lot of our set space was sort of double duty. Every time we wanted to see the blank holodeck, the painters had to come in, paint the floor black, put down the Scotch-Light yellow tape, and rework some of the door labels and things. But we kept up with that pace.
Yeah, it was just like sets that one day are the captain's quarters and the next day they're a chapel.
Yeah. So when you were actually shooting people appearing on a holodeck or having an environment appear around you, that was all like a blue screen, green screen, on another stage.
Any more questions? Go ahead.
I was wondering, we see a lot of conceptual designs from Star Trek, have influenced a lot of technology and stuff today, but you see a lot of artistic designs from Star Trek influence technology today?
Oh, some of the guys from Motorola who came up with the original flip phone, I mean, they came out and admitted, you know, they were influenced by the original series communicator. You know, so I mean, so it's happened. It's happened. I can't say that I invented the iPod, but my original pad had, you know, that sort of Apple styling in 1987, way before the iPod first came out. So, you know, we look at them, they look at us, and you know, the technology really is, you know, everybody's traveling together, you know, on this big path.
Questions? Go ahead.
I don't know if maybe Gene had something to do with this, or maybe you can answer this question. The beds that were in the original series in the sick bed, that were able to diagnose things. Do you know anything about that?
You know, I don't. I saw that set. I've been on that set. I've sat on those beds. But I think Gene had his finger in every pie. But he had great art directors. He really did. And the art designers, and Matt Jeffries just was a god. So I suspect he was there when they decided to do it. He definitely wanted it to have the feel of a ship. That is, a sea ship. And so those bunks were designed that way. And of course he felt that in the future it would be impossible to have somebody in there without being able to tell everything about them in those beds. And the only time they'd run into troubles when they had somebody like Spock in there, who was different. So he was there in everything. You couldn't write a show if he wasn't there.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, working on that Star Trek The Next Generation technical manual, how much was that based on theoretical research and how much was it just like pure imagination?
You know, I was talking the other day about, you know, science and engineering and art and, you know, things like what we made up for the show. I've always thought that a lot of the Star Trek technology, you know, it has been influenced by real science and engineering. You know, I think it's always been that way. Star Trek has always had, you know, a very close relationship with NASA, going back to the 60s. I've got, you know, Mike Kukuda and I have a lot of mutual science and engineering pals, you know, professionals who, you know, can answer these sorts of questions. I've absorbed tons of it by osmosis. Dr. Steve Howe was at Los Alamos Labs working with real antimatter, and Steve became a you know, good buddy back in the 80s. And you know, people like that, we would call upon them and say, you know, look, Steve, okay, we want to create some notes for the writers about the matter-antimatter reactor. Okay, talk to me about matter and antimatter. You know. And we would, you know, we would correspond about things like that, you know, the medical technology and things like the holodeck. Okay, and you know, we just, yeah, we you know, we extrapolated as smartly as we could, right? Because we knew, I think we pretty much knew. If the fans saw something really bogus, they would let us know.
JJ train.
There, you know, when I was there, I had a chance because I went from just a freelancer. Within 2 months, I went into being staff upstairs in the building. And one of the things that I discovered was, I think it's Kellum DeForest Research.
Yes, yes.
And they were marvelous. They had a great sense of humor. But if you wanted to do something science fiction-y, everything ran through this research agency. So if they didn't have it, this research agency would come up with devices. They would come up with technology because they knew everything. They had libraries all the way to the Library of Congress at their disposal, which meant that if you had a problem with the script, there'd be notes all over the place as to what you could do. And you have to give Kellum DeForest credit for a lot of the techie that you're talking about.
And then we took over.
Yes, and then you took over. Yeah, but I'm just saying, they understood, this is possible, this is so far out, we're not gonna let you do this.
Yeah.
All right, so we have about 5 minutes left. I'll take another question, then we're gonna close it. Go ahead.
So not to bring this back to the new series coming up, but I know you had said you have a pretty good working relationship with Mike Kuda, and it sounds like you're saying that you might not be involved in the new project. Any possibility he might be being brought into that? Either of you?
You know, the door's been pretty much shut for me, but, you know, I give him a big thumbs up and, you know, wish him all the best. You know, there are some legacy people who are being considered for the new show. You know, I know that they are doing some work in Los Angeles before they pick up sticks and move to Toronto.
Can I, have you worked in Canada?
No, I have friends who have worked up there.
I worked in Canada on Airwolf too, and part of the problem is, for someone like yourself or other people from here, they have to pay a nice, great big waiver fee to hire someone from the States. So that's why people don't get taken up there.
Yeah.
And they might take an executive producer or a producer, but the rest of them are filled in with Canadian citizens doing the shows.
Yeah.
And so you just get cut out unless they want you so badly they're willing to pay that fee.
Yeah. Well, I've got friends who, you know, they say it's easier to, you know, get work up in Toronto than it is, let's say, Vancouver. Okay, and I would have, you know, picked up sticks, you know, to go to Vancouver if Stargate, you know, had called. Because I thought, you know, they got it. Okay, you know, and the Stargate franchise, I think their writers understood a lot of the tech that frankly we had, you know, provided on Next Gen, but they took that stuff and they ran with it, and that was terrific. But you know, the IATSE union, you know, crosses borders into Canada as well, and there's some of that to deal with. But, you know, I just give them a big thumbs up. If they can bring Star Trek back to television, terrific.
Okay, and last question. There's 50 years of Trek that we've all enjoyed, so I'd like you each to tell us your favorite Star Trek memory or experience during that time.
Sure. Renowned Tholian punctuality. I didn't write that line, Leonard did. Again, when we're going along in the script, and suddenly he says, when the zapper zaps him, she said, renowned Tholian punctuality. I went, okay. So now I have credit for something that I didn't do. Thank you very much. And I've treasured that moment for a long time.
I can't focus on one memory. It's you know, for me it was the entire experience. You know, working on a couple of the feature films and the modern Trek series. So it was you know, it was a good chunk of time, and I had a great time with it.
I have one more, and that came from Wrath of Khan. I got a call from Harv who said, I'd like you to meet our composer. And it was a very young James Horner who was just amazing. He said, this man is going to go places. Wait till you hear what he's written. And so I watched a session of them playing the music for Wrath of Khan. And I'll tell you, that was genius. Just so you know, I mean, between Nicholas Meyer Harv and this composer, it was kind of like having John Williams on. That's another thing I remember.
Okay, well, thank you to each of our guests for their excellent